You know what nobody tells you about being a firefighter? It's that most days are actually pretty routine. You respond to car accidents, small kitchen fires, medical calls. You grab coffee with your crew. You complain about the same broken equipment. You go home to your family. September 11th, 2001 started exactly like that. I was 32 years old. I'd been with the FDNY for 8 years. I worked out of a firehouse in Lower Manhattan, and that morning I was sitting in the kitchen with my guys, drinking terrible coffee and arguing about whether the Yankees would make the playoffs. It was a Tuesday. Beautiful weather, clear blue sky, and then everything changed. I'm going to tell you what that day was like. Not the version you've seen in documentaries or movies. The actual experience of being there, of running towards something that everyone else was running away from. The small details that stick with you, the things that don't make it into the history books. But I also want to tell you about what came after, because 9/11 wasn't just one day. For those of us who were there, it stretched out across months and years. It changed who we were. Some of this is going to be hard to hear. I'm not going to dramatize it or make myself out to be a hero. I'm just going to tell you what happened. So let me take you back to that Tuesday morning. The first plane hit at 8:46 a.m. We heard it before we saw it. This sound that didn't make sense. Too loud, too close, too wrong. We ran outside and there was smoke pouring out of the North Tower of the World Trade Center. Black smoke billowing against that perfect blue sky. At first we thought it was an accident. Maybe a small plane, a pilot who had a heart attack or lost control. It seemed impossible that a commercial jet could hit a building like that in clear weather. But we didn't stand around trying to figure it out. We were in the truck and rolling within 2 minutes. I remember looking at the guys in the truck with me. Tommy, our driver, who had 3 kids and coached Little League. Mike, who was always cracking jokes, always had a story. Captain Rodriguez, who'd been doing this for 20 years and had seen everything. Nobody was joking now. As we drove toward the towers, we could see people on the streets, all of them looking up. Some were crying. Some had their hands over their mouths. Some were just standing there, frozen, trying to process what they were seeing. The closer we got, the worse it looked. The smoke was thick and black, and you could see flames. We could see debris falling from the building. At least, that's what I thought it was at first. Debris. Then I realized what I was actually seeing, and my stomach dropped. People were jumping. I need you to understand something. When you see that on television, it's terrible, it's horrifying. But when you're there, when you're looking up and you can actually see human beings making that choice, it does something to you. It breaks something inside you that never quite heals. We pulled up to the towers, and it was chaos. Organized chaos, but chaos nonetheless. Fire companies from all over the city were arriving. Police, EMS, Port Authority. Everyone converging on this one point. The sound was overwhelming. Alarms going off, people shouting, radios crackling with traffic, the roar of the fire, and this other sound, this horrible thudding sound that I didn't want to think about. Captain Rodriguez gathered us up. "We're going in," he said. "We're going to climb. We're going to get people out. Stay together. Stay focused. Stay safe." We grabbed our gear. 75 pounds of equipment, minimum. Bunker coat, pants, boots, helmet, air tank, tools. On a normal day, climbing stairs in that gear is exhausting. This wasn't going to be a normal day. We headed toward the entrance of the North Tower. Here's something you might not know about the World Trade Center. Each tower was 110 stories tall. The stairwells were narrow. There were no windows. And on that day, we were going to climb as high as we could, in full gear, while thousands of people were trying to come down those same stairs. The elevators weren't an option. Some weren't working. The ones that were, we couldn't trust. You don't get in an elevator in a burning high-rise if you can help it. You take the stairs. So we started climbing. The lobby was destroyed. Glass everywhere, metal twisted, ceiling tiles hanging down. The marble on the walls had cracked from the impact. There were people being triaged, people with burns, people in shock, but we couldn't stop. We had to keep moving. Stairwell B. That's the one we took. The first few floors, we were moving pretty quick. Then we started passing people coming down, office workers mostly. Some were calm, orderly, helping each other. Some were panicking. Some were injured. Every single one of them looked at us like we were crazy for going up. Keep moving, we told them. Stay calm, stay to the right, keep moving down. Some of them thanked us. Some were too scared to speak. One woman grabbed my arm and said, "There are still people up there. There are so many people up there." I told her we were going to get them. We kept climbing, floor 10, floor 15, floor 20. The air was getting thicker, hotter. You could smell the smoke even through your mask. The people coming down were in worse shape now. More injuries, more burns. Someone had broken their leg. Someone else was having an asthma attack. We did what we could, but we couldn't stop. Other units were behind us. They could help. Our job was to get higher, to get to the people who were trapped above the fire. Floor 25. Floor 30. My legs were burning. The gear was heavy, the air tank was heavy, and every step up was work. I was in good shape, we all were, but this was brutal. You'd take a few steps, pause to breathe, take a few more. And the whole time, people were streaming past us, going down. That's what I remember most about the climb. The faces. Hundreds of faces, thousands maybe, all going past us in the other direction. Young people, old people, every race, every background. All of them scared. All of them trying to survive. We kept climbing. We were somewhere around the 35th floor when the second plane hit. The building moved. I don't mean it shook a little. I mean the entire structure shifted under our feet. The walls groaned, the stairs buckled, and for a second, I thought the whole thing was coming down right then. We grabbed the railings. We grabbed each other. We pressed ourselves against the walls. Dust and debris rained down from above. The lights flickered, and then it stopped. "What the hell was that?" Tommy said. Our radios were going crazy, everybody talking at once, trying to figure out what happened. And then we heard it. Another plane. The South Tower had been hit. This wasn't an accident. This was an attack. That changed everything. Because now we knew we were in a building that someone had deliberately flown a plane into. We knew there might be more coming. We knew that this was bigger than anything any of us had ever dealt with. Captain Rodriguez looked at us. "We keep going," he said. "People are counting on us." So we kept going. But something had shifted in my head. Up until that moment, some part of me had still been in normal firefighter mode. Dangerous situation, but manageable. We'd been trained for this. We knew what to do. Now I was scared. Not scared enough to stop. Not scared enough to turn around. But scared in a way I'd never been before on the job. This feeling in my gut that told me things could go very, very wrong. We climbed past the 41st floor, then the 45th. The people coming down were different now, more panicked, more desperate. Some had been in the South Tower when it was hit. Some had burned hands from hot doorknobs. Some were covered in jet fuel. One guy was carrying a woman on his back. She couldn't walk, and he wasn't leaving her. I helped him for a few floors, made sure he could make it down safely, then kept climbing. Floor 50, floor 55. We were slowing down. The heat was intense. The smoke was getting thicker, even in the stairwell. We were going through air faster than we expected. And then the radio started reporting that the South Tower was in serious trouble. Structural integrity compromised. Evacuate. Evacuate immediately. We looked at each other. We were in the North Tower, not the South. But if one tower could collapse... "We keep going," Captain Rodriguez said again. But I could hear it in his voice now. The doubt, the fear. We made it to the 61st floor. That's where we found them. A group of about 20 people trapped behind a locked door, trying to get into the stairwell. The impact had warped the frame and they couldn't get it open. This is what we were there for. This is why we climbed. We got to work on that door. Mike had the halogen bar. Tommy had the axe. They pried and pounded while the rest of us kept people calm, distributed what water we had, assessed who needed the most help. It took maybe 5 minutes to get that door open. 5 minutes that felt like an hour. When it finally gave way, these people poured into the stairwell like they'd been holding their breath. Some were crying. One man hugged Mike so hard he almost knocked him over. "Okay, everybody listen up," Captain Rodriguez said. "Stay together, stay calm, keep moving down. Do not stop, do not use elevators, help each other. You're going to be okay." They started down. We made sure they were moving, made sure nobody was left behind in that office. And then we heard it, this sound, like nothing I'd ever heard before, like the earth was tearing apart. The South Tower was coming down. We couldn't see it, we were inside the North Tower, but we could feel it. The vibration came up through the building, through our feet, through our bones. The walls shook. Dust came pouring down the stairwell from above. The lights went out completely for a few seconds, and in that darkness, with the building shaking around us, I thought, we're going to die here. The lights flickered back on, emergency lighting, dim and eerie. The radios were chaos, screaming, crying, people calling Maydays. The South Tower had collapsed, just gone. Straight down, taking everyone inside with it. Everyone. How many firefighters had been in there? How many police officers? How many civilians? The number was impossible to process, and we were in an identical building that had been hit first, that had been burning longer, that could come down any second. "We need to evacuate," someone said on the radio. "All units, evacuate the North Tower immediately." Captain Rodriguez looked at us. We looked at the people we'd just rescued, still making their way down the stairs. "Let's move," he said. "We're going down, now." So we turned around and started descending. You ever try to run down 60 flights of stairs in 75 pounds of gear after climbing 60 flights up? It's not running, it's controlled falling. You're fighting your own momentum, fighting gravity, fighting the weight on your back. My knees were screaming, my lungs were burning even through the mask. But we moved as fast as we could. We passed other firefighters still coming up. We yelled at them to turn around. The tower was coming down. Get out. Some listened. Some didn't. Some were determined to get higher, to search one more floor, to save one more person. I think about them sometimes. The ones who kept climbing, we kept going down. Floor 55, 50, 45. We were making good time, but it wasn't fast enough. The building felt wrong. You could sense it in the way the structure groaned, in the way the air felt. Floor 40, floor 35. We were passing abandoned equipment now. Air tanks people had dropped to move faster. Helmets, coats. Everyone was shedding weight, trying to get out. Floor 30, floor 25. The stairwell was packed with people. We were all moving down together, this slow river of humanity trying to escape. Some people were helping others. Some were praying. Some were just quiet, saving their energy. Floor 20, floor 15. We could see daylight now, filtering down from below. We were going to make it. We were actually going to make it out. Floor 10, floor 5. We hit the lobby and started running for the exit. The lobby was even more destroyed than when we'd come in. Ceiling had collapsed in places. Fires were burning. Everything was coated in this thick white dust. We made it outside just as the North Tower started to collapse. Have you ever been close to a building collapse? The sound is the first thing. It's not like in the movies. It's deeper, more visceral. Metal tearing, concrete pulverizing, thousands of tons of material giving up its fight against gravity. Then comes the wave. A wall of debris and dust rolling toward you faster than you can run. Gray-white and dense, like a living thing, consuming everything in its path. "Run!" someone screamed, but we were already running. We ran down the street away from the tower, but the cloud was faster. It caught us, swallowed us. Everything went dark, not dim, not shadowy. Dark. I couldn't see my hand in front of my face. I couldn't breathe. The dust was so thick it was like trying to breathe concrete. I had my mask on, but I'd burned through my air on the climb. The tank was empty. I stumbled into a building, I don't even know which one. Just felt a doorway and went through it. There were other people in there, coughing, choking, crying. We huddled there in the darkness and waited. Seconds, minutes. I lost track of time. Eventually, the worst of it passed. The air cleared enough to see shapes, outlines. We made our way outside. The world had changed. Everything was gray. The buildings, the street, the cars, the people, coated in this thick layer of dust. It looked like a nuclear winter, like the end of the world. And where the towers had been, nothing. Just smoke and dust and a glow from the fires underneath. Both towers. Gone. I stood there trying to process it. 110 stories, each tower, thousands of people. My brothers from other firehouses, all gone in less than 2 hours. Someone grabbed my shoulder. It was Tommy. His face was gray with dust, streaked where tears had run down. "Mike?" I asked. He shook his head. "Captain Rodriguez?" Another head shake. Out of the 5 of us who climbed into that building together, only 2 of us made it out. The rest of that day is a blur. We searched. That's what we did. We searched through the rubble. We searched the surrounding buildings. We searched everywhere we could, looking for survivors, looking for our brothers, looking for anyone. The fires were still burning. The smoke was so thick you couldn't see more than a few feet. Every few minutes there'd be another collapse, another section of debris falling. It was chaos, but organized chaos. Everyone working together, everyone trying to help. We found people, not many, but some. People who'd been in the periphery when the buildings came down. People who'd been shielded by debris. People who'd gotten incredibly, impossibly lucky. But we found a lot more bodies than survivors. I don't want to go into detail about that. I don't think I need to. You can imagine. Or maybe you can't. Maybe nobody who wasn't there can really imagine. We worked through the afternoon, into the evening, through the night. Nobody wanted to stop. Nobody wanted to go home. What were we going to do, just leave? While there might still be people alive under there. At some point, someone made us sit down and drink water. Made us eat something. Your body keeps going on adrenaline for a while, but eventually, you crash. I sat on a curb at maybe 3 in the morning, eating an energy bar someone had given me, looking at the destruction. The fires were still burning. They'd burned for months, actually. The smell was indescribable. Burning metal, burning plastic, burning everything. And underneath it all, something worse. Something I try not to think about. A guy sat down next to me. I didn't recognize him at first under all the dust, but it was a cop I knew, Officer Chen. We'd worked together on calls before. "Hell of a day," he said. "Yeah." We sat there in silence for a while. "How many of yours?" he finally asked. "2, that I know of. You?" "3. We sat there some more. "We're going to be here a while," he said. He was right. We were there for days, weeks, months. Let me tell you about the days after. The first week you're running on adrenaline and shock. You work 18-hour shifts at ground zero. You go home and crash for a few hours. You come back. You don't think. You don't feel. You just work. You're searching through unstable piles of rubble. You're cutting through twisted steel beams. You're sifting through debris looking for any sign of life, any sign of remains, anything that can give families closure. The equipment is constantly breaking down. The air is toxic, but nobody wants to wear the masks because they make it harder to work. Your hands are cut up from the sharp metal and glass. Your lungs hurt from breathing in all that dust and smoke. But you keep working because what else are you going to do? The whole country is watching. People are calling you a hero. They're lining up to give you food, water, supplies. They're clapping when fire trucks drive by. They're putting up flags and signs saying, "We will never forget." And that's nice, it really is. But it doesn't change the fact that you're pulling body parts out of the rubble. It doesn't bring back your friends. After a week, the hope of finding survivors is basically gone. After 2 weeks, it's definitely gone. But you keep searching anyway because finding the dead matters too. Bringing people home to their families matters. The pile at Ground Zero is massive, stories high in places, unstable, dangerous. Equipment keeps sinking into it because there are these voids underneath, these spaces where the floors pancake down. Sometimes you'd see smoke coming up from the pile because fires were still burning deep inside. The temperature down there was incredible, hot enough to melt boots, hot enough that water you poured on it would turn to steam instantly. We lost more people at Ground Zero after 9/11. Collapses, accidents, equipment failures. People who survived the initial attack but died in the cleanup. Every few days, they'd find a body, or parts of a body, and they'd stop everything and everyone would line up, and they'd carry that person out with full honors. Flag draped, salutes, the whole thing. 343 firefighters died on September 11th. That number became seared into my brain. 343 of my brothers. The single largest loss of life for firefighters in American history. I knew some of them. Not all, the FDNY is big, but some. Guys I'd trained with. Guys I'd worked calls with. Friends. Mike from my crew, they found him 3 weeks later. Or enough of him to identify. He was being honored as a hero, and he was, but I kept thinking about how he'd been making jokes in the truck that morning. How normal everything had been. Captain Rodriguez, they never found. He's listed among the missing. Probably still buried somewhere in that pile or scattered to nothing by the collapse. Here's what they don't tell you about trauma. It doesn't hit you all at once. It sneaks up on you. The first month, I was fine. I mean, I wasn't fine, but I was functioning, working, helping with the cleanup, going through the motions. The second month, I started having trouble sleeping. I'd lie awake thinking about the people jumping from the towers, about the sound the buildings made when they collapsed, about Mike and Captain Rodriguez. Third month, I started having nightmares. Always the same one. I'm climbing the stairs in the North Tower, but they never end. I just keep climbing, and I can hear the building starting to collapse, but I can't get out. I'd wake up gasping, covered in sweat, sometimes screaming. My wife tried to help. She was patient, understanding. But how do you explain to someone what it was like? How do you describe the smell, the sounds, the feeling of that dust choking you? A lot of marriages didn't survive 9/11. Mine almost didn't. I started drinking more. Not a lot, just a couple beers to help me sleep. Then it was 3 or 4, then it was more than that. I'd snap at people for no reason. I'd drive by Ground Zero on my days off, just to look at it, even though being there made me feel worse. The department offered counseling. I didn't go. That was stupid, but I didn't go. I was a firefighter, I was tough, I could handle it. That's what I told myself. A lot of guys felt the same way. We were supposed to be the ones who saved people, who ran into danger, who didn't break down. Asking for help felt like admitting weakness. More stupid thinking. 6 months after 9/11, one of the guys from another firehouse killed himself. He'd been at the towers. He'd made it out, but something inside him didn't. He left a note saying he couldn't stop seeing it, couldn't stop hearing it, couldn't make it stop. That shook me. Made me realize that maybe I wasn't handling things as well as I thought. I finally went to see someone, a therapist who specialized in trauma. And slowly, over months, years, really, I started to get better. Not all the way better. You don't get all the way better from something like that. But better enough to function. Better enough to sleep most nights. Better enough to be present for my family. There's this thing that happens to firefighters who were at 9/11. Your lungs start to deteriorate. All that dust we breathed in, all that toxic smoke, all those chemicals from the burning buildings, it does damage. Permanent damage. They call it World Trade Center cough. Lots of guys have it. Chronic respiratory problems, asthma, scarring in the lungs. Some develop cancer. Lots develop cancer, actually. I started having breathing problems about 2 years after 9/11. At first, I thought it was just me getting older, being out of shape. But it got worse. Shortness of breath, wheezing, chest pain. The doctors ran tests. Lung function was down, scarring, inflammation. Nothing life-threatening yet, but it was there and it wasn't going away. I was still able to work, but I had to be more careful. Had to use an inhaler. Had to pace myself on calls in ways I never had to before. Other guys had it worse. Guys who had to go on disability. Guys who couldn't work anymore at all. Guys who died from cancers that were directly linked to their exposure at ground zero. There's a victim compensation fund now. It took years of fighting, but they finally recognized that people got sick from working at ground zero, that they deserved help with medical bills and lost wages. But here's the thing about that fund, it keeps running out of money. Because people keep getting sick. 20 years later, people are still getting diagnosed with cancers. Still dying. 9/11 didn't just kill people that day. It's still killing people now. I know at least a dozen guys from that day who've died since. Not from injuries sustained in the collapse. From illnesses that came later. From the dust, from the smoke. From the toxic stew we all breathed in while we searched through the rubble. Every time I hear about another one, it's like losing them all over again. Let me tell you about the memorials. There are a lot of them. Official ones, unofficial ones. The reflecting pools where the towers stood. The museum. Plaques and statues and parks dedicated to people who died. I've been to most of them at one point or another. Sometimes on the anniversary, sometimes just randomly when I'm in the area. They're beautiful and they're important, and I'm glad they exist. But they don't capture what it was really like. How could they? How do you memorialize something like that? The reflecting pools are peaceful, serene, the names carved into the bronze, the water falling into the void where the towers stood. It's moving, it really is. But when I'm there, I'm not thinking about the peaceful water or the symbolism. I'm thinking about the chaos, the noise, the fear, the smell. I'm thinking about the people I couldn't save. Every 9/11 anniversary, there's a ceremony. They read all the names, all 2,977 people who died in the attacks. It takes hours. I've been to a few of those ceremonies. It's heavy, emotional, families crying, holding pictures of loved ones, politicians giving speeches about never forgetting, about staying strong. And I appreciate it, I do. But there's also this weird disconnect. Because for most people there, 9/11 is something that happened to other people. Something they saw on TV. Something terrible and tragic, but also something distant. For those of us who were there, it's not distant. It's right here. It's in our lungs when we cough. It's in our nightmares when we sleep. It's in the empty seats at the firehouse where our friends used to sit. I don't say this to diminish anyone else's grief or trauma. Lots of people lost family members, lost friends. The whole country was affected. The whole world was affected. I'm just trying to explain that there's a difference between remembering something and living with it every day. You want to know something strange? Most days now, I don't think about 9/11. I mean, it's always there in the background. It's shaped who I am, how I see the world, but I can go through my daily routine without actively thinking about the towers or that day or what happened. Until something triggers it. Could be anything. The smell of smoke from a barbecue. A plane flying too low. The anniversary coming up on the calendar. Someone asking me about it. When that happens, it all comes rushing back. The sounds, the smells, the fear. Just for a second, I'm back in that stairwell, climbing toward the fire, or I'm running from the collapse, or I'm searching through the rubble. Then it fades, and I'm back in the present. The therapist said that's normal. Trauma doesn't just go away. You learn to live with it. You learn to recognize the triggers, to manage the responses. to not let it control your life. Some days are easier than others. I retired from the FDNY in 2015. My lungs couldn't handle it anymore, and honestly, my head couldn't either. I'd had a good run, 22 years on the job, but it was time. It was hard to leave. Being a firefighter wasn't just what I did, it was who I was. But I couldn't keep doing it. My body wouldn't let me. I do consulting work now. Fire safety inspections, training, that kind of thing. It keeps me connected to the work without having to run into burning buildings. My kids are grown now. They were young on September 11th, didn't really understand what was happening. But they understand now. They're proud of what I did, which is nice, even though I don't feel particularly proud. I was just doing my job. We all were. My wife is still with me. That's something. A lot of marriages didn't make it. The trauma was too much. The stress too high. But we worked at it. We got help, and we made it through. She's the real hero in my story. People ask me sometimes if I regret it, if I wish I hadn't gone into the towers that day. The answer is complicated. Do I regret the physical damage, the lung problems, the chronic pain, all of that? Yeah, I could do without it. Do I regret the nightmares, the therapy, the years of struggling to process what happened? Sure. But do I regret trying to save people? Do I regret doing my job? No, I don't. We got people out. I don't know how many exactly, but we got some people out who wouldn't have made it otherwise. That group on the 61st floor that we freed from behind that jammed door, they made it, all of them. I know because one of them tracked me down years later to say thank you. 20 people who got to go home to their families because we climbed those stairs. Was it worth Mike and Captain Rodriguez? Was it worth all the guys we lost? I don't know. That's a question I can't answer. Life isn't a math equation where you can calculate the value of one person against another. All I know is that we did what we were supposed to do. We ran toward danger while everyone else ran away. We tried to help. We did help. At least some. That has to count for something. Here's what I want you to understand about 9/11. It wasn't like the movies. It wasn't dramatic music and slow motion and heroes making speeches. It was chaos and confusion and fear. It was people trying to survive. It was ordinary people doing extraordinary things because that's what the situation required. The firefighters who climbed those stairs, they weren't thinking about being heroes. They were thinking about getting to the next floor, about breathing, about the people they needed to help. The office workers who helped each other down the stairs, who carried injured strangers, who stayed calm and kept others calm. They weren't trying to be heroic. They were just trying to get everyone out alive. The first responders who kept searching through the rubble even when there was no hope of finding survivors. They weren't looking for glory. They were trying to bring people home to their families. That's what heroism actually looks like. Not grand gestures, but small acts of courage repeated over and over in terrible circumstances. And the thing is, most of the real heroes didn't make it out. They're the 343 firefighters, the 72 police officers, the 55 military personnel, the 2,977 total victims who died that day. Those of us who survived, we're just the ones who were lucky. Right place, right time, right decisions. Luck. I think about that a lot. Why did I make it when Mike didn't? When Captain Rodriguez didn't? When so many others didn't? There's no answer. It was just chance. Randomness. The chaos of that day, but surviving when others didn't, it comes with a responsibility. To tell the story, to make sure people remember what happened. To honor the ones who didn't make it. That's why I'm telling you this now. 23 years have passed since 9/11. An entire generation has grown up with no memory of the attacks. For them, it's history. Like Pearl Harbor or the JFK assassination. Something that happened before they were born. And that's okay. That's how time works. Life goes on. But I also think it's important that the story gets passed down. Not just the facts. You can get those from any documentary or textbook. But the actual experience, what it was like to be there, because 9/11 changed everything. It changed how we think about security, about terrorism, about our place in the world. It changed politics, it changed culture, it changed the literal landscape of New York City. And for those of us who were there, it changed us on a fundamental level. I'm not the same person I was on September 10th, 2001. That version of me died in the collapse. The person who came out of that dust cloud was different. Harder in some ways, softer in others. More aware of how fragile life is. More grateful for the time I have. The guys I work with now, the younger firefighters I train, they weren't there. They know about it, they respect it, but they don't carry it the way we do. And that's fine, they shouldn't have to. But I try to teach them what I learned that day. Not about tactics or procedures, though those matter too, but about taking care of each other, about staying humble, about remembering that we're not invincible, about understanding that one ordinary Tuesday morning can change everything. I want to tell you about one more thing before I finish. There's a piece of steel from the North Tower on display at our firehouse. It's not big, maybe 3 feet long, twisted and scarred from the heat and the collapse. Every new firefighter who comes through, at some point, they end up standing in front of that piece of steel, and one of us older guys will tell them the story about what happened that day, about the brothers we lost. It's become a tradition, a way of passing down the memory. Last month, I was at the firehouse, and there was a probie, a new recruit, staring at that steel. He couldn't have been more than 22, 23. Wasn't even born when the attacks happened. He asked me what it was like. I started to tell him the story, the climb, the collapse, all of it. But halfway through, I realized I was giving him the sanitized version, the version that doesn't include the worst parts, the version that makes it easier to hear. So I stopped and I started over. And I told him the real story, the people jumping, the bodies in the rubble, the nightmares and the breathing problems and the friends who killed themselves years later because they couldn't live with what they'd seen. I told him about Mike and Captain Rodriguez and the sound the buildings made when they fell. He looked shaken when I finished. Maybe I was too harsh. Maybe he didn't need all the details. But then he said, "Thank you for telling me. For real." And I realized that's what matters. Not protecting people from the hard truths. Not making it easier or cleaner or more palatable. But telling them what actually happened. Because if we forget, if we let the memory fade into something abstract and distant, then those 2,977 people died for nothing. The pain and the sacrifice and the loss, it all becomes meaningless. We have to remember the good and the bad, the heroism and the horror, all of it. So here's what I want you to take away from this. 9/11 happened. It was real, it was terrible, and it changed a lot of lives forever. But it also showed us something important about human beings. When everything falls apart, when the worst happens, people step up, they help each other. They run toward danger to save strangers. They carry each other downstairs and through smoke and debris. The firefighters who climbed those towers, they didn't do it for recognition or glory. They did it because people needed help, and that's what firefighters do. The office workers who stayed calm and helped others evacuate, they didn't do it to be heroes. They did it because it was the right thing to do. All the people who searched through the rubble for weeks and months, who donated blood, who volunteered, who sent food and supplies, they did it because they wanted to help. That's the real lesson of 9/11. Not that terrible things happen, we already knew that, but that when they do, people are capable of incredible courage and compassion. I saw the worst of humanity that day. People who would fly planes into buildings full of innocent civilians. People who would murder thousands in pursuit of ideology. But I also saw the best. And honestly, I saw a lot more of the best than the worst. That's what I hold on to. That's what gets me through the hard days. If you take anything from this story, I hope it's this. Tell the people you love that you love them. Don't wait. Don't assume there will be time later. Because Mike was going to take his kids to a ball game that weekend. Captain Rodriguez was planning his retirement party. All those people in the towers had plans and dreams and futures, and then they didn't. Life is fragile. It can change in an instant. A clear blue Tuesday morning can turn into the worst day of your life. So don't waste time on things that don't matter. Don't hold grudges. Don't put off the important conversations. Don't take for granted that you'll get another chance. Live like you understand how precious and temporary all of this is. Because you do now. I'm not special. I'm not a hero. I'm just a guy who showed up to work on September 11th, 2001 and did his job. And who got lucky enough to make it home. A lot of people didn't. Remember them, honor them, tell their stories, and live in a way that makes their sacrifice mean something. Thanks for listening. If this story meant something to you, do me a favor. Share it with someone. Keep the memory alive. And maybe leave a comment telling me about someone you lost that day or how 9/11 affected your life. We all have our stories. They're all worth telling. And if you're struggling with trauma, with PTSD, with anything related to that day or any other terrible thing you've lived through, get help. Talk to someone. Don't wait like I did. There's no shame in it. There's only shame in suffering alone when you don't have to. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Never forget.